CM Punk has broken his silence on AEW. New matches have been confirmed for AEW Full Gear tonight, and people are very concerned for Adam Cole. Find out why in the wrestling news right now. We ended the last news video by saying, let's never speak about CM Punk ever again. Let's move on with our lives. The eagle flies away with the eagle's nest. That makes no sense, but it did in my mind. Fraser, what's the news about CM Punk? He's spoken about AEW, hasn't he?
He has spoken about AEW. So last night he was on Cage Fury Fighting Championship, where he commentates. He's one of the MMA commentators there. CM Punk was making a few jokes on commentary. His broadcast partner made a joke about Punk's injury status, and he sort of said, everything is hurt. I'm nursing everything. Obviously, he's got a sore shoulder. He made reference to that during the clip. His broadcast partners then went on to tease that they were hoping to create a sort of a new professional wrestling organization, which he stopped them in their tracks and was like, oh, I'm bad news. You don't want me in the locker room.
Yeah.
Which, fair.
At least he's owning it. Being introspective, looking at his flaws as a human being, and realising that he's clearly a knobhead.
That is the breaking news on it. But his broadcast colleague sort of finished up by referring to the brawl out at All Out sort of situation, where he was like, yeah, that'll mess up your entire organization. And I like working here, man. Don't let him do any press conferences. And then Punk sort of laughed along with it and then went, are we live?
Yep.
So he's introspective. He's aware of the situation. I'm just really surprised that we get his silence broken on an MMA.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is his second appearance on this on the Cage Fury Fighting Championship events, because he did one last week that we referenced on the Cultaholic Wrestling podcast this week, and he just looked 25 years younger. His skin looked lovely. He's got his hair grown out a bit, He just looked like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders, which clearly it has done over the last little while. And to see him having fun, I guess that means conclusively investigations over things have been done that are going to be done, because I'm surely he wouldn't be joking about it if it was an ongoing process.
You would hope.
I mean,
considering Tony Khan on the media call was like, yeah, I will not comment on any ongoing investigations, but we love Punk's contribution to AEW. And then here's Punk going, yeah, don't put me on a press conference.
To be fair, in that, in the Fable press conference, he did make Tony Khan like a right,
absolutely.
He had him round his little finger, didn't he?
Did,
under his thumb, whatever the saying is. But now we have backstage news on a potential return for World of Sport. Of course, this has come out of nowhere. Sort of Nick Aldis, just to set the scene. Nick Aldis has left the NWA.
Yeah.
Nick Aldis has spoken out about a lot of issues with the NWA that anyone with a working set of eyes in ears would agree with. And now it comes out of nowhere that Nick Aldis and his wife, Mickie James, have been approached, it would seem, about about a World of Sport return. World of
Sport return, yeah. So they're coming from the Wrestling Observer newsletter. They says there's no indication of a deal, only that they've reached out to Aldis and see if there's any interest for James. For what we understand, the Goldsmiths, now they used to promote WWE shows in the UK, from what Aidan was telling me yesterday.
Wow.
I know, right? So they reached out to the Goldsmiths, who have bought the ownership of the World of Sports name and heavily invested a lot of money into the promotion. With the death of NXT UK and so many wrestlers back as free agents, they kind of see an opening in the marketplace, which I'm not surprised. Like, there's so many free agents. NXT UK roster is down to, I think there's 3 people that remain.
I think they're all American.
They're all
now,
moved over, apart from Noam Dar.
Oh, is he still signed? Oh my God.
So he's still signed, just not doing much. But they have no idea, what the next step for him. But the idea is to do studio wrestling like Billy Corgan does with the NWA and sort of build live events. But there's no word on if ITV will be associated with it, because they did it last time, but they've now got AEW.
Yeah, and it was very different from what AEW was or is back in the day when World of Sport came around, because it was on initially. It started at sort of prime time on a Saturday night, sort of 5 or 6 o'clock, and because of that, obviously, they had to cater very much to kids and whatnot. So the camera cuts and the production of the show just wasn't for a wrestling fan, but that's fine. They want to try and open it up to a new audience that wasn't already watching. So it's an interesting one to keep your eye on. ITV could go back, you never know, because they do have several channels.
They've got several channels, and if AEW has been successful for them, which I think Tony Khan has been touting that it has, why not get more wrestling that will appeal to a more wider audience? I just feel personally like World of Sport might not have a place in the current scene. Yeah. Especially if it then tries to sign all these guys that were made independent again, that maybe don't want to be under contract.
I tell you, a British version of the NWA though, like the sort of back to the NWA Power, like the debut of that in 2019, the sort of studio base with everything in the room, that sort of aesthetic. I think there's room for that just as a wrestling promotion. Maybe not for television, but just as a wrestling promotion over here.
It'd be quite fun to go to live and see that style.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
Just as long as Mr. Biggles comes back.
Yeah.
What was his name? The commissioner? I've forgotten his name completely.
I can't even remember.
Just had this random old man just making all the matches. Just like, come in here, old man, off the street. Make matches.
Johnny Saint.
Leave him alone. How dare you? Stone Cold Steve Austin is another. Oh no, that's a horrible segue. Stone Cold Steve Austin could be returning for WrestleMania 39. What's the news here, Fraser?
So we reported previously that an offer had been made to Stone Cold Steve Austin to return for another match, but now we've had sort of more confirmation that there is smoke to the fire from Wrestling Observer newsletter. They say there's been lots of talks in recent weeks. Steve Austin he's willing to work another match, which is pretty cool. Like I don't think anyone thought maybe a year and a half ago that Stone Cold would ever work one more match. Never mind 2.
Well, no, he was the one who stayed retired. He was the one who had to retire for circumstances outside of his control because of his neck and whatnot. And we all heard the story heading into WrestleMania 19 with the energy drinks and the heart episode and all that sort of stuff. So he wanted to end it on his own terms. He got the best ending possible at this year's WrestleMania, as far as I was concerned, against Kevin Owens. He knocked it out the park. Yep. He was doing suplexes on the floor, on the ramp. He just did things we didn't expect to see, and it was the perfect ending. And if he wants to come back for one more payday, good on him, because I've got complete faith that he won't just ruin everything. So that's always the big fear when someone comes back after such a long time away, is that they'll just sort of tarnish. You think of Shawn Michaels.
I know.
Saudi Arabia, don't you?
That would sort of ruined the legacy. Not ruined the legacy.
It's just a little tarnish.
It was like, oh God, that's his last match. But yeah, Stone Cold possibly coming back. The Wrestling Observer newsletter says, all we know for sure is that there is smoke to the fire and something is in the discussion phase. The ideas being discussed internally are being kept secret. So hopefully that'll come out soon.
And of course, they do have to sell out 2 nights at a huge stadium. So having Austin on that card is going to help that along.
Who would you like to see him face, though?
Personally, for me, John Cena, sort of battle of the eras, Attitude Era versus whatever came after it, Ruthless Aggression / PG.
PG era.
I think the two, it wouldn't obviously be, what the modern day wrestling fan might, want in terms of as Braun Strowman would call it, flippy floppies. But it's very much a storyline based thing, and I think those two could pull it off because they are good.
But my only concern, and that's the thing, having him face John Cena is fantastic, but there's no one on the active roster that feels
Logan Paul.
Yep, there we go. Logan Paul versus Stone Cold. He would get a good match. He would get a good match. I don't know.
It's still out there. It's like how much of it is Logan and how much of it is the guy he's in there with. Because so far he's had good opponents so far. I'm not taking away from any of the moves he can do. He can do everything excellently. But I mean, in terms of structuring a match and putting it all together and making it all work, how much is that him and how much is that?
Even at that, if he was with Stone Cold's one of the best.
Stone Cold
could put together an incredible match.
Yeah. We have now news of new matches added to AEW Full Gear tonight. I think before last night's Rampage, there was 11 matches on the card. I think one was removed to be put on Dynamite. That was the final of the tournament. And now we've had 3 more put on. So Fraser, let's run down the card. Do you want to alternate the matches?
Let's do it. Right, who do you want to kick off?
I'll kick it off with Eddie Kingston versus Yun Akiyama.
Orange Cassidy, best friends Rocky Romero, and a very mysterious, very evil partner versus The Factory.
If that's not Dan Howes now, will be shocked. These two are on 0 Hour, by the way. Also on 0 Hour, which is like the kickoff show sort of thing. It is the AEW World Title Eliminator semi-final, Starks versus Cage.
They're followed up by Sting and Darby Allin versus Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal.
Saraya takes on Britt Baker in her first match for several years.
A steel cage match with Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus.
Then we have the TNT title on the line as the champion Wardlow defends against Samoa Joe and Powerhouse Hobbs.
Then we've got Jade Cargill versus Nyla Rose for the TBS Women's Championship.
Trios titles on the line. Death Triangle and the Hammer defeat. I hope they defeat. They take on Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, the Elite.
Then my boys, the Acclaimed versus Swerve in Our Glory for the tag team titles.
Will Sammy Guevara turn on Chris Jericho?
No.
He might do in several ways, but not the way we're anticipating. Because we have a fatal 4-way for the Ring of Honor World Championship. Champion Jericho taking on Danielson, taking on Castagnoli, taking on Guevara.
And then the interim AEW Women's World Championships, Toni Storm versus Jamie Hayter.
And then finally for the AEW World Championship, we have the champion Moxley defending against MJF. That is a stacked card.
It is stacked.
They always knock out the park with their pay-per-view, so I've got no doubt that one will. Because that's always the way I feel heading into it. It's like, that is such a big card. It's going to be such a long night trying to get through it all. But then it just flies by. But then the stuff happens after, so
it flies by until you look outside and it's light again and the birds are about out and it's 6 a.m. and you're like, oh God. I'm really excited for this. I think this is MJF's night, right?
It's got to be. You can't squash his momentum now. It's just the right time.
Do we think a Regal turn's happening?
Personally, I do.
Yeah.
I think the fact that Regal's been going, you've got to stop cutting corners, MJF, and MJF's been like sympathy for the devil. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled is making people think he didn't exist.
Yep.
And then he turns heel. So that's been done wonderfully. How he's been a babyface since he returned. But for him now to do something dastardly and heelish, and for Regal to maybe set it up, that the line on this week's Dynamite where MJF was saying to Regal like, "Oh, there's no need to use the Dynamite Diamond Ring, isn't that right, Willie? Who could hand me some brass knuckles in potential?" So
I'm excited for that though.
Yeah, big time. Going to be a good show indeed. Of course, we have lots of content about AEW Full Gear. We'll have a live stream tonight with Adam and Andrew, I believe it is, live on the YouTube channel as the show is going on live. So when the show is on live, if you're watching it alone, you've got two friends there for you on the YouTube channel. Then tomorrow we'll have What Happened At, we'll have WTF, and I think that is it.
I believe so, yeah. We've got plenty of content.
We have lots of content. But now we end on it is sad news for Adam Cole, because the quote is people are very concerned about him. He's been out for such a long time now, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be ending anytime soon, does it, Fraser?
No, not at all. Cole suffered a serious concussion at Forbidden Door. He was in that fatal four-way match. He sort of collapsed towards the end. Jay White sort of covered him, but very safely covered him for the pin, and then we've not really seen him since. We saw him in August and he turned on the Young Bucks, but he didn't really get physical.
He's live on Twitch a few times. I've been watching his Twitch.
He's raided us a few times.
Has he actually?
Friday night, yeah.
Hello, Adam.
It's been lovely.
He doesn't watch these, does he?
Thank you to the chugs. But in the Wrestling Observer, Dave Meltzer did note that Adam Cole's situation, while it was not addressed by Tony Khan at the pre-Full Gear media call, but a number of people have brought up being very concerned for him. What this means for Cole's future in professional wrestling, we're not quite sure. It's quite a severe injury, and people in the past have reported that he might not wrestle again if it's that bad. I'd be gutted. He's one of my favourites.
Well, obviously, I think he's one of everyone's favourites.
Yeah.
They barely scratched the surface with him in AEW, so that's a case of what might have been, which is obviously always a horrible one. But the most important thing is the guy's health, so just let him recover. And if he returns, he returns. If he doesn't, it's a massive shame. I think that's all we can say.
I want him back, but healthy.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. That's it for your Saturday morning news. Or this is going live in the afternoon, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it for your Saturday all-day news. A-Town down. Anything to plug there, Fraser?
Not just all the Full Gear stuff that you plugged earlier on. I've actually go and watch the Crown Jewel worst shows ever. That went up on the channel a few weeks ago. Go and do that.
I appear in that one, do I?
You do. Yeah,
I do.
you do.
I wonder why. Shame up, man. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next. Oh no, we'll see you tomorrow. Lots of live content, live streaming, as Fraser said there. What Happened At and WTF on the channel. So watch them when they appear, please and thank you. Goodbye. All the best to you. I hope you have a lovely Saturday and an even better Sunday consuming Cultaholic Wrestling.